Today, we are putting the official announcements, the dates we know, and those cliché details Netflix has shared aside, because behind the scenes of One Piece live-action Season 3, things have started to become much more mysterious. From massive set-piece claims leaked from the sets, to hidden casting choices fans believe they have spotted, and even that much-talked-about clue that could take us up into the clouds of Skypiea in the season finale. Today we are putting everything Netflix is trying to hide from us on the table. Will Alabasta just be a desert adventure, or are we entering the darkest and most political era of the live-action universe? If you are ready, before Crocodile's sandstorms swallow the city, we are going after the leaks. First, let's make this clear. This is not an official Everything We Know video. Here, we will focus more on the movement behind the scenes, the set details that are claimed to have leaked, casting rumors, fan theories, and the possibilities the community is talking about. So in this video, we will not speak as if everything is confirmed, but we will try to put the pieces together and understand how the third season could take shape. Because in a massive universe like One Piece, sometimes even a small set detail can open the door to a much bigger story. And honestly, the rumors surrounding the third season right now are exciting enough on their own. When people talk about One Piece live-action Season 3, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is Alabasta. But the real question here is not just, will Alabasta happen? The real question is how big, how emotional, and how political Netflix will make Alabasta feel. Because Alabasta is not an ordinary island adventure. This story has civil war, drought, the desperation of the people, palace intrigue, a secret organization like Baroque Works, and of course, behind all of that, an intelligent, ruthless, and manipulative enemy like Crocodile. So the third season could truly be the season where One Piece live-action levels up. That is exactly why the information claimed to be coming from the sets matters so much. Some fans believe that bigger-than-expected sets are being prepared for Alabasta, especially with large areas being used for desert cities and the palace atmosphere. These are not officially confirmed details, but for an arc like Alabasta, they sound very logical, because this season cannot feel small. The viewer needs to truly feel the heat, the drought, the sandstorms, and a country slowly being dragged toward collapse. Here, it is not just what the characters say that should tell the story. The world itself needs to tell the story too. At this point, the visual side will be very important. For example, when talking about Alabasta's drought, the screen should not only show character shots, but cracked ground, empty wells, sandstorms, destroyed streets, and desperate people. Because the feeling of this country is in danger needs to be given to the audience not through words, but through visuals. If Netflix does this correctly, Alabasta will not just be a beautiful background, it will almost feel like a character of its own. And I think this will be one of the biggest details that determines whether the third season succeeds or not. So who will we see in the middle of these massive deserts, palaces, and battlefields? This is exactly where the casting rumors that excite fans come into play. The Alabasta story does not only move forward through Luffy, Vivi, and Crocodile. Pell, Chaka, Koza, and the characters on the royal side are also names that carry the emotional weight of this arc. If these characters are not handled strongly enough, the political side of Alabasta could feel weak. Because what Vivi is trying to save is not just a map of a country, it is the people she knows, loves, and is willing to risk everything for. Koza, especially, is very important here, because Koza is directly connected to Vivi's past, her childhood, and the heart of the rebel army. If Netflix handles Koza correctly, the civil war in Alabasta will not look simple, like the good side and the bad side. On the contrary, it will become the tragedy of people who have been misled but are actually trying to save their country. And that makes Crocodile's plan much more terrifying. Because Crocodile's real power does not only come from the sand fruit, it comes from his ability to use people's pain, anger, and desperation for his own plan. Here, I also want to ask you, do you think the live-action third season should spend more time on Koza and the rebel army? Or should the story focus more on the Straw Hat crew and Crocodile? I think for Alabasta to be effective, the rebel side absolutely needs to be built strongly. Because if we do not understand why the people rose up, why they do not trust the king, and why Vivi feels so desperate, then the big emotional explosion in the finale will not work the same way either. What makes Alabasta unforgettable is not just the big war, but the misunderstandings and heartbreak behind that war. Of course, one of the third season's biggest strengths will definitely be Vivi. At first glance, she may look like a character who travels alongside Luffy and his crew, but in Alabasta, she completely becomes the center of the story. Vivi's effort to save her country, her journey of learning to trust her friends, and eventually being caught between her own responsibility and her friends could form the most emotional side of the season. If Netflix writes Vivi correctly, she could be one of the most talked about characters by the end of the third season. Because in this story, Vivi is not just a princess. She is a young leader carrying the pain of her country on her shoulders. If Vivi's journey is strong, the bond she builds with the Straw Hat crew will become much more powerful too. That is why throughout the season, we need to feel her relationship with Luffy, Nami, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Chopper step by step. Especially the bond she builds with Nami could be very valuable, because both of them are characters who suffered for their people, took responsibility, and tried to appear strong. If Netflix adds small but sincere scenes here, Vivi's decision in the finale will feel much heavier. And yes, if that famous farewell scene arrives in the finale, and if it is handled properly, it could become one of the most emotional moments of the live action. But Alabasta has a dark side, just as much as an emotional side. And at the center of that darkness stands Crocodile. Crocodile is a very critical villain for One Piece live action, because he is not someone like Arlong, who only creates a physical threat. Crocodile is patient, calculated, cold-blooded, and political. He does not destroy a country by attacking it directly, he destroys it by rotting it from within. He turns the people against the king, presents himself as a savior, and behind the scenes, controls everything for his own benefit. That is why live-action Crocodile really needs to be terrifying. I think the most important side of Crocodile is that the audience should not only see him as a strong man, but as this man is truly dangerous. There should be a sense of threat in his scenes. The atmosphere of the room should change when he enters. People should fear him, but at the same time, some people should trust him. Because that is exactly where Crocodile's plan works. He can look like a hero in the eyes of the people while preparing the country's disaster in the background. If Netflix builds this dual structure correctly, Crocodile could become not only the best villain of the season, but maybe one of the best villains of the entire live-action series. Do you think live-action Crocodile should be more terrifying than Arlong? I think absolutely yes. Because Arlong's threat was more personal and emotional. He hit us through Nami's past. But Crocodile's threat is bigger. He is not destroying one person. He is destroying an entire country. That is why in the third season, Crocodile needs to stand out not only with his fight scenes, but with his plans, manipulation, and psychological pressure. Write in the comments as well. Would you rather see Crocodile as a more cold-blooded mafia boss, or as a more flashy and theatrical villain? The Baroque Works side is also very important for this reason, because Crocodile is not working alone. There is a huge organization behind him, and this organization will test every member of the Straw Hat crew separately. Mr. 1, Mr. 2. Miss All Sunday, Miss Doublefinger, and the other members should not be used only as side enemies. Each of them brings a different energy to the story. Especially the success of this season could depend on how well the individual fights of the Straw Hat crew are handled. Because in Alabasta, it is not only Luffy who grows, the entire crew grows. Bon Clay, on the other hand, is a completely separate matter. Because adapting a character like Bon Clay into live action is truly difficult. If you make him too exaggerated, some viewers may not take the character seriously. If you make him too calm, then the character's soul disappears. That is why Netflix needs to establish a very delicate balance here. Bon Clay needs to be funny, dangerous, and eventually touch the hearts of the audience. Because One Piece fans do not love this character only for his fighting style. What makes him unforgettable is that he is unexpectedly emotional and loyal. As for Ace, the excitement is already on another level. Because Ace's role in the story at this point is not very long, but his impact is huge. Fans do not want him to be used only as a short cameo. They expect the brotherhood bond between him and Luffy to be felt, and Ace's charisma and warmth to be delivered correctly. Some fans think the live action could give Ace a little more screen time compared to the anime. That could make sense too, because leaving a popular character like Ace in only a few scenes could feel like a missed opportunity for Netflix. But they need to be careful here. Since Ace is such a beloved character, if he is pushed too far forward, he could overshadow the main story of the season. This should still be the story of Vivi, Alabasta, and the Straw Hat crew. If Ace is used in the right amount, it would be great. A few strong scenes with Luffy, short but warm moments that make us feel their brotherhood, and small clues that set up bigger events in the future could be enough. Sometimes a character does not need to stay on screen for a very long time to be effective. It is enough for them to appear in the right scene with the right energy. Expectations are also very high when it comes to the fight scenes. In Alabasta, every Straw Hat member has moments where they can shine. Zoro's fight against Mr. 1, Sanji's encounters, Nami's struggle on her own, Usopp and Chopper's team battle, and of course, Luffy standing up again and again against Crocodile are some of the most important parts of this arc. In live-action format, it may not be possible to tell everything as long as the anime does, but the important thing is to preserve the spirit of the fights. Every battle should serve character development. They should not be there just for action. Especially Zoro's fight with Mr. One could be a huge moment for fans, because this fight is about Zoro surpassing his limits. Nami's struggle is just as important, because we need to see her stand out not only with her intelligence, but with her courage too. On the Usopp and Chopper side, we can expect a fight that is more comedic, but also emotional at the same time. This variety is very important, because the power of One Piece comes from the fact that every character can be a hero in a different way. Luffy may throw the biggest punch, but sometimes Usopp shows the greatest courage. Now, let's come to that big possibility I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Could we see a hint at Skypiea or the next big adventure in the season finale? I think this is very possible. Netflix usually likes to leave small signs at the end of seasons that carry the audience into the next chapter. After Alabasta ends, we could see a newspaper headline, a strange detail related to the sky, a small reference to Jaya, or a short scene that changes the Straw Hat Crew's route. Even if this is only a few seconds long, it would be a huge moment for fans. But the most important thing in the finale should still be Vivi's farewell. A Skypiea hint would be nice and would create excitement for the next season, but the heart of Alabasta is the bond between Vivi and the Straw Hat Crew. If Netflix captures this emotion correctly in the finale, the third season could truly become unforgettable. That silent farewell, the sign of friendship, and Vivi's decision to stay in her own country could become one of the strongest scenes of the live action. That is why the finale should open a small door to the next adventure, but Alabasta's emotional closure should never be overshadowed. Overall, One Piece live action Season 3 has now turned into an expectation, growing through rumors more than official information. The scale of Alabasta, Crocodile's dark plans, Vivi's emotional journey, Ace's screen time, Bon Clay's adaptation, the fights of the Baroque Works members, and a possible Skypiea hint at the end of the season are currently the topics fans are discussing the most. If even some of these rumors turn out to be true, the third season could become a real turning point for One Piece live action, because this season has the chance to prove that the show is not just a successful anime adaptation, but one of Netflix's biggest fantasy adventure projects. As you can see, Alabasta is not just a place where Luffy fights Crocodile fist to fist. It is a massive stage where the fate of a country, friendship, and sacrifice are put to the test. So, what is your biggest expectation from Season 3? Would you rather see Crocodile as that cold-blooded mafia boss, or are you more excited for the first moment Ace appears on screen? Please share all your theories with me in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this analysis, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to join the Cinematic Cravings family so you can hear about new leaks right away. I'll see you in the next video, deeper in the Grand Line. Take care.